Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching NewsX. A US judge could decide within 24 hours whether to block Elon Musk's Doge team from accessing key government systems. The lawsuit, filed by 13 Democratic state attorneys general, has accused Musk's team of dismantling programs and firing employees at several federal agencies. The states argue that Musk's actions are unauthorized and threaten the functioning of government services. As Musk's team pushes for sweeping reforms, these actions have sparked concerns about the potential harm to federal agencies and their ability to serve the public. With the case continuing to unfold, the questions arise. Should Musk's approach to government restructuring be allowed to proceed, or are his actions overstepping legal boundaries? Joining us to discuss this very interesting topic, we are first joined by Adrian Calamel, a terrorism scholar and fellow at the Arabian Peninsula Institute, joining us from New York. We also have Scott Faulkner, the former Associate Administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration, joining us live from Washington. And finally, we have Himanshu Bhatt, who is a senior journalist, joining us from Gujarat. I'd like to come to you first, please, Scott, to look at these lawsuits that have been filed by the states. And I want to ask you a question that delves just a little bit deeper than what they're saying. I want to question Elon Musk's authority to be making these decisions, as he's not Senate voted. Do you think that somebody with so many fingers in so many business pies should have the power that he does?
Well, first of all, he himself is not taking the action. The action is being taken by either President Trump or by his appointees who have already been confirmed by the Senate. So the Doge, in its own organization, advises, it recommends, it does not take action. So you're not going to see a single memo signed by Musk or any of his people saying these actions are occurring. So that's where this whole legal basis starts to fall apart.
The argument, though, some might say, Scott Faulkner, is that the access that he has to these files, to these systems, and to the information that is private and personal, is there not a question being raised about that, the fact that him and his team does have that access?
Access is needed. Washington is legitimately called a swamp because for decades, the corruption, the waste, the fraud has been off the charts. That's why we're $32 trillion in debt as an American government. In the past, and we're talking over the last 100 years, the system has always prevailed and the waste and fraud has always continued because people go in and study it, and after a year or two they issue a report that nobody looks at, or if they look at it, they then just throw it in the wastebasket. Musk is a very action-oriented person. Trump learned his lessons from his first term, where he basically didn't clean house, he didn't bring in his own people, and he basically listened to people who he shouldn't have listened to. So he had 4 years to realize how much the system gamed him, and he's coming in this time to say, this time it's different, and it is different, and that's what the American voters elected him for.
Yes, and Adrian, I'd like to bring you in. Action, of course, has been happening, but some has been rescinded. We've seen recently that staff that were fired from the nuclear program have been reinstated. Is there a concern that Musk is making these decisions too quickly and that there should be a wider group of people who are making these decisions, including people who've been voted in by the Senate, before action's taken?
Well, I do think that there is a wider group making these decisions, as Scott just rightly pointed out, Joshua. Now, is he making these decisions too quickly? There's a possibility there, but we can see that there is some flexibility where they said, oh, well, we need to bring these individuals back in. What we have to remember about Washington, D.C. is that people get these positions in government and they think they're lifetime positions. They collect taxpayer money, they never work a real job, and they continuously fail upwards. And you know, in the old business principle, a certain person reaches their maximum potential at a certain point. And then they are eventually, if they are promoted, they are way out of their league, they're out of their depth, and they're ill-suited and ill-equipped for the position. And that's a large part of the problem in DC is we have people that are in positions that are ill-equipped to do these jobs. And then you look at bureaucracies and agencies, they are created to address a problem or serve a certain purpose. But over time, they grow. Bureaucracies never get smaller. They always grow in size. And then sometimes the scope of the mission changes. What they're actually there to do changes. So, and that change may not be beneficial. So all these things need to come under some type of scrutiny. In the business world, you get performance evaluations every 6 months to a year. You don't see that happening in the U.S. government.
Yes, Himanshu Bhatt, I'd like to bring the firings that we've seen from federal and government departments. There, of course, have been a lot of layoffs, and looking at the money that can be saved, do you think that there is an eye on changing those patterns and changing the guard almost, as has been mentioned by Adrian? Do you think that the way that the government is going to move and the direction they're going to move in is going to be a large shift considering the changes we're seeing?
Well, they will have to move in large way. They'll have to move in the direction which they've decided. It's something like this, See, that's the problem with all the democracies. Me being an outsider as far as these two gentlemen are concerned, from Bharat, from India, I look at the same problems here. Too fat bureaucracy doing nothing, absolutely. And then when you get something like Doge, what happens is there is always an element that wants to obstruct you in doing certain things. To put it very, very blindly, if I put it very blindly, it's something like this. When Elon Musk came in, he took over X from Twitter, he fired 80% of his employees. And still they worked efficiently. If he's going to do that same thing with the federal government with such a fat purse and such a huge debt of 32 trillions, well, it's going to serve the purpose for the USA. And that was what the promise Donald Trump gave to his voters. He'll have to live up to that. And whether you are Joshua, you are asking, whether it's too fast. Well, my friend, he has just practically 2 years. After 2 years, he doesn't know whether, where he'll have majority. And in 2 years, a maximum 4 years, minimum 2 years is the time that an American president has. And if he really wants to deliver this time, he will have to take revolutionary steps. And it's something like this, I'll put it very, very blindly, very, very, people might not like me for saying that, being a journalist. But, if the money is allotted for climate change studies and you do LGBTQ stuff, well, my friend, it's not going to work. The same problem we have, similar type of problems we have in India also. And that's why, I can relate. And I can say he's doing the right thing. I don't know how the judicial system is going to work there because there, even the judiciary is appointed by Democrats and Republicans. So wherever there is a Democrat, he's going to rule against Trump.
Yes.
Wherever there is a Republican, there might be something else that might happen. So it's all, a routine way of scuttling things, slowing things down. When you move a juggernaut, you want to go at a full speed when somebody puts a spanner into it. That is what happens. And I wish, once, when something is progressing, it doesn't happen with USA this time. Because for 12 years, we have seen funny things happening in USA. I'm sorry to say, but as an outsider, I've seen funny things happening in USA. Yes, Joshua?
Yes, and Scott, I'd like to look at a statement that's come out in recent hours from the White House. They've said Musk not a Doge administrator. They say he has no authority to make government decisions. Do you think the people of America feel that?
Well, again, we're back to the issue that 96% of the media hates Trump, hates the Republicans, and basically hates America. They want to protect the swamp. So they're going to spin this in all sorts of ways, but basically Trump is saying exactly what his executive order that established Doge in the first place said. They're an advisory body. They advise, they recommend, and then Trump, as president, or his appointees have already been confirmed by the Senate, take the actions. So there's no real news here, except the media will make something of it.
What I want to press, though, Scott, is the fact that it said that Musk has no authority to make decisions. But what we do know is potentially that his relationship with the man who is making the decisions could mean that his suggestions are listened to. Do you think that that relationship between the two is as strong as it's reported in media, or do you think Elon Musk is just there to do a job, and that is, as you've mentioned already, try and revolutionise a department which is struggling?
Once again, Trump was elected with the most votes and highest electoral college vote of recent American presidents, on the Republican side in particular. So the result is that he has a mandate to change. Americans are fed up with watching their tax dollars being literally burned in a bonfire or flushed down a toilet. They really want to have change happen. And that means more than just a bunch of advisory reports that people throw in the wastebasket. He's saying, Musk is a very action-oriented person. Trump's a very action-oriented person. And so as they find things, which they're finding every day, you can go on their Doge website and see the list, very well documented. They are sitting there going, well, let's not wait till July of next year. Let's take action now because this stuff needs to stop. And so the actions are being recommended, and through normal, proper channels of the presidency and his appointed, confirmed appointees, they are taking the action. So, the people are not used to quick turnaround. They're used to, years of study and big fat 1,000-page reports that nobody reads. They're not used to Trump speed. They're not used to Musk speed, but America wants that.
Yes, and you mentioned action. Elon Musk's Doge has found that $4.7 trillion of treasury payments may have been made, but they are untraceable. Adrian, how could something like that happen?
Oh, wow, Joshua,
Absolutely.
Good question. One of the places you need to start with is there's so much money that has been unaccounted for that's just out there in the ether, and then there's some that's been accounted for, and I will point to USAID, USAID, and the money they have been giving around the world. Samantha Powers has given billions to the Taliban in Afghanistan, funneled through the UN under the auspices of some type of aid. This is fungible. It goes directly to terror financing. You look at the USAID programs and what they finance in countries such as countries that were going through these orange revolutions. They've had a globalist approach. They are heavily backed by the Soros organizations. So right there, when you have Soros, people should question more about the role Soros has had in U.S. government agencies such as USAID and or think tanks that are pushing these ideas on U.S. policymakers that are becoming policy and really draining the U.S. Treasury for programs that are a hindrance to us, work against us, and in the process bankrupting us.
Picking up on USAID, Himanshu, I'd like to come to you because there, of course, is a geopolitical ramification to the removal of American funding across a lot of areas, including humanitarian aid. Do you think it's time that other countries start stepping up, and if so, who might?
Something like this, a designated terrorist by UN is ancillary firm in United States gets a funding from USAID. It's a Pakistan. Maulana Hafiz Saeed, that is what they call. And one of his organizations was getting the funding from USAID. How is it the regime change operation in Bangladesh took place? Who provided those funds? How much did Donald give for that regime change to the so-called student leaders of Bangladesh? Let me ask you that straight question. And that's why, when Adrian said, USAID, I'll say National Endowment Funds. that funding is also going to come. And millions and trillions of rupees, trillions of dollars we are talking in terms of here. It's not only India that has suffered. And at least our politicians had the gumption here to talk it in public. For the first time in the independent Indian history, we are talking in terms of deep state here in our parliament. Now, what does it suggest? It suggests so many things. There was such a huge rot in the system down in the superpowers administration, because that is what America likes to call itself. USA likes to call itself a superpower. Yes, but then you behave like a superpower, act like a superpower, not just boss around. And that is what probably, Trump has started doing. That's why he said, make America great again. Now see, when does a leader has to give that slogan, make America great again? That means it's no longer great now.
Yes.
Whether you like it or not, you will have to accept it with a pinch of salt.
Yes.
And that is where the whole problem comes in, even this judicial ruling in 24 hours. You will see if it's a democratic county. I don't know whether it's a democratic district or whatever it is. Then it will be against Doge. I can take that, vouch that. Sitting here in India somewhere, I can vouch on that. Because the divisions are so sharp in the US society, social structures. And that's why, Joshua, I would say one thing, stopping of all these things, rerouting the money for the welfare of the state is going to work. Maybe we are a poor country when compared to USA. But we are coming up. And we will come up. And that's why I say, at times, slow and steady wins the race. But at times, you need quick lightning speed to bring about the reforms to give a shock treatment. And that is what probably US needs. Yes, Joshua?
Yes, Scott, I want to look at Elon Musk in this situation and potentially question his motives. Why do you think he has become so embroiled in American politics, and why do you think he's putting the time in to try and turn America around and make America great again?
Because he's a true patriot. One of the things that Trump lacked in his first term was a kitchen cabinet. Every president has an inner circle. Obama had his Chicago people. Biden had the Obama people. Reagan had his kitchen cabinet, which I worked closely with way back when. Trump had only his family. This time around, he finally has in his chief of staff on one front and Musk on the other, a true inner circle of people who he actually listens to, which is a tremendous improvement over his first term. And they are action-oriented people. And he is taking the actions that need to be taken. I mean, he doesn't take a salary. He's the first president to never take a salary. Musk is not taking a salary. I mean, these are people who could both be living wonderful lives as private citizens, and they have stepped into the ring. We had a famous president, Teddy Roosevelt, who talked about the man in the arena and how bloodied and in battle, he is at least in the arena fighting for the goodness of America and its citizenry. They have stepped into this arena, and they didn't have to, but they realized America was at stake. The West was at stake. The world is at stake for America to finally clean up its act, drain the swamp, and do the things that need to be done to be a great power again.
Adrian, let's bring it back now to the legal challenge which has sparked this debate with us today. Really looking now at the impact that this could have. What happens if Musk is curtailed and his powers are taken away in some sort? Do you think that there will be any change to Trump's agenda, and do you think there'll be any change to Trump's and Musk's vision in terms of cleaning out and draining the swamp, as has been mentioned there by Scott?
If, and that's a very, very big if, Joshua, if they are curtailed, I would still expect that Musk and Trump work together. I mean, they can't stop them from having open communications and talking about these things. So this is what we're seeing right now is a case of lawfare to try and block policies. Unfortunately, well, thankfully, the Republicans did not do this type of thing during the Biden administration. They kind of tended to play by the rules, call people before Senate, have congressional hearings, etc. The Democrats have had a practice of going through the courts to try and tie people up. And we saw this during Trump's first administration, where he was tied up in legal battles for 4 years. There were personal legal battles. Now they're going after policy here, which, I look at the individuals that are raising these lawsuits. I'm saying, well, these are individuals that are clearly worried about their job, worried about the little cronies that are underneath them that support them, because they are judges who sit in these positions in different states, and they have a support team below them, everybody that backs them, from the congressional members to state assembly members, and they know that their job could be on the line. So therefore, they probably pressured up to the various judges and said, we need to try and block these type of actions, which is just preposterous. I mean, we're back to the days where, I'll just leave you with this one parable, Joshua. There used to be an old joke when you're driving down the thruway in the United States, and construction is blocking it up for miles, and you finally get to the place where they're doing some work, and there's 10 guys standing around one shovel, and there's one guy using the shovel while the other guys sit there and talk. That's what the American government has become. I can't make it in more simple terms than that.
No, thank you for that analogy. That does make a lot of sense to me and to the audience, I'm sure. Scott, I'd like to finish with a question to you. A legitimate query that has been raised by some supporters of the Democrats and some enemies and foes against this Doge and Musk project is looking at the national security aspects and also looking at safety. Do you think that's a legitimate fear, and how can that be circumnavigated if there is a concern?
One of the key things here is to recognize, just like my colleague just said, that we have in places 23 layers of management. Walmart, the largest private employer in America, has 5 layers of management, between the person who checks out your groceries to the headquarters in Arkansas. What the left tries to do, what the courts are trying to do, what the media is trying to do is say that we are affecting the front line, that the people who are, whether it's the air traffic controllers or the border guards or whoever, they always try to go after it, say, well, if you're going to cut, you're going to be cutting the front line. And then we call it the Washington Monument analogy, where they say, well, if you're going to cut back on the Park Service, let's close the Washington Monument. They try to come up with these absurd scenarios and raise these issues while keeping the 20 and 23 layers of management intact. We need to remove those, just like my colleague said about the 10 people that stand around watching one guy with a shovel. That's Washington on steroids. And so these issues that they keep raising, I mean, they never raised the issues when they were throwing pilots out for being unvaccinated during the Biden years. I mean, these people really have a gall. I mean, look at, whether it's the Attorney General in Letitia James in New York and all these others who are lecturing us on the Constitution, lecturing us on the law, lecturing us on security and effectiveness, when they spent 4 years carpet bombing the U.S. Constitution in America. We need to stay focused. Americans voted for change. They're getting it. And the courts, which are mostly politicized, are standing in the way. This is all going to end up at the Supreme Court, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Scott, Adrian and Himanshu, we are unfortunately out of time, but thank you very much for your input in that extremely insightful discussion. We will, of course, have a result from the latest judge's order when we'll see if Elon Musk will still have the power that he does, not just in America, but also potentially across the world.